Do 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 do.
I'm the guy who stabs a cigar with the umbrella, by the way. No, wait a minute. No, he stabs it to throw it away.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
Felix.
Yeah,
Felix
I'm
Oscar's
yeah.
cigar. Yes.
Or Oscar throws it, Felix cleans it up, yeah.
Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is, in fact, Right Angle Backstage, your pre-production meeting. And as you may have noticed, there's not the normal quarter-inch divider between Bill and myself.
Provides a handy
over
scale,
here.
the size of the two of us. You'll see Scott is actually 1.15 scale replica.
That's right. I'm actually very tall standing up, but very short sitting down.
Objects
Now
in browser
who's- now
may be
who's the big
larger than
guy?
they
Now
appear.
who's-
Now the
little
advantages
homunculus.
of wide-angle lenses.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we happen to be together in an undisclosed location somewhere near Los Angeles, the city that never lives. Wait a minute, what is the name? There's a slogan. Oh, and we have calls coming in even right now. Should we take one on the air? I thought I had already turned this down.
Hey,
Hello, Albuquerque.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
That's right. See, the Do Not Disturb button does not mean what you might think it means.
Hello, Baton Rouge. Please respect the 7-second delay we use.
That's right. You're on the air with Stephen Green, who has members this week. Steve,
Do.
go, baby.
Oh, well, you said members, and you know what I'm going to say, don't you?
No.
You're going to say that you're putting me out of business. The price of these. Oh my God!
You're going to say we love our members and we would not ever subject them to something repeatedly that the other two hosts have expressed displeure with.
I go as high as
members
X's. I can
love
get to
it.
so I can get to XXXVIII.
Yeah, we're running out of Roman numerals.
It'd be IL, wouldn't it? Well, we'll figure it out. XL.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, after that point, paying for them is L.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So anyway, we've got another Roman numeral to figure out. That's going to take an hour.
So you know the drill. Artisanally hand-picked headlines just for the two of you from the best and worst of the week's news.
Are they steel cut headlines?
They
He
are steel-cut
says-
headlines.
He says artisan.
Organically grown, dew-picked.
Isn't the artesian one the well rather than the bread?
You know, which beer company was it that did those commercials in the early 80s about their artisanal water? And the big mystery was who the artisans were. And one of the people they talked to in these ads who loved their beer was knitting a sweater for the artisans, and it had 4 arms. I wish I could remember what the beer was. I'll probably never drink
The things that have been done to sell beer in this country, a product which I would think needs no sales pitch. You know, it's like people
And
already
yet,
want to
bikini
drink
girls.
beer. I think every commercial for beer should just be a thing of where to get it. Like,
That does seem like enough.
do they really need to convince you?
Siri,
Yeah.
beer.
That's right. So you're going to then besiege us with
Yes.
headlines about which we know not at this point.
Yes. These they're kept in a hermetically sealed jar
That's good.
right up until showtime.
Now, does that mean the jar itself is sealed within some kind of hermetic package?
It's sealed by actual hermits.
Hermits doing it at the Hermitage.
They're related to the artisans.
Well, they were losing control of this fast.
Okay, so begrudgingly we say that will be your members episode, and then we'll even grant you one more if you don't screw this up.
Well, you know, it just so happens I have a regular topic for our regular episode. Isn't that nice?
Dun, dun.
And who
history.
doesn't like, and when I say who doesn't like a good gripe session about millennials, I'm not including the millennials who are members or viewers at BillWhittle.com, because they always chime in on the comments with something thoughtful and a little bit of denial with, not that they're denying the problems, but saying,
I'm not one
these
of
are
them.
not my people.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's
Yeah.
just say up front,
And God
this
bless
should be
you.
a warning that if you're ever offended by anything you hear on this show, you're not the one we were talking about.
That's right.
It's the other guy.
It was the one. It was the
Well
guy over
said.
there. And just, yeah, write that in stone. Carve that in stone. A couple of stories about millennials caught my eye just in the last few days. One of them was 3 in 5 millennials say life more stressful now than ever before. And you can probably guess the kind of things that are really stressing them out. Can you hazard any guesses?
High price of Uber, having to do your own laundry. I don't know.
I find having to do my own laundry is a Zen-like experience that brings me great peace.
5 out of the 20 items, and these were listed in the order ranked by millennials, saying, this is my number 1 concern, number 2 concern, whatever. And they totaled this all up into a list of 20. I won't tell you what they all are just yet, but out of the 20 items, 5 of them involve smartphones, and all 5 are in the top 10 out of 20.
Wow.
We were at Disneyland yesterday, as some people may know, and we walked past Pinocchio's Scary Adventure late at night, and I thought, my God, what does that consist of? Pinocchio, you go in, and you walk into your office, and you're met by an IRS auditor, and then after that, at your doctor's appointment, you're told that there's a shadow on one of your x-rays. Those are things to worry about. I don't think a particular... in fact, I can say with some confidence that there is nothing that could happen by way of my cell phone, about the cell phone, that could cause me a great deal of distress, including the destruction of the cell phone.
I was thinking this the other day, Steve, and maybe you can weigh in on this either now or in the future on the episode, but I wondered the other day if the average person of that cohort had the choice between not having a smartphone for 5 years or not having furniture in their house.
No question.
You think they would
say, question.
I can live without furniture?
Absolutely.
They would buy a giant futon-shaped phone.
Well, but the deal is you can't acquire you can't get on your phone and contact Wayfair.
They'd sleep on cardboard boxes. I'm telling you, there's no question about it. No question.
So how high could that ratchet up? Like 5 years of no smartphone or 5 years of no health care? I mean, like, how far could you go?
They don't need health care. They're young.
Well,
that's true.
I was going to say, or 5 years of no sex, except according to some surveys, millennials aren't having that either, so they wouldn't be giving anything up.
What was the name of those guys? The guys who were having that problem and then they go kill everybody?
Incels?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I thought you meant Siegfried and Roy.
Here, kitty. Okay, so you're not going to tell us the whole list at any point.
No, I'm not. Oh, I'm not going to do the entire list because some of it's really obvious stuff like losing your keys, forgetting your wallet, that kind of stuff. Just mundane stuff that kind of bothers all of us.
The keys was the Uber app.
It might be.
Oh, you mean like the house keys where they don't have any furniture because they spent all the money on the cell phone?
Exactly.
Can you imagine comparing their top 5 anxieties with, like, if you asked a person the same age, like a 19-year-old who's just gone ashore on Iwo Jima, what his top 5 anxieties would be, or top 5 worries?
Getting shot by a Jap playing dead.
Yeah,
that's exactly the answer you get.
The next 30 seconds. What is my mom going to do when there's no one to bring in the corn harvest? I'm not joking. I'm serious as I can be.
Yeah.
My girl is necking with that draft dodger.
Yeah. And his name was Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is like, actually, this is not widely known, but he's like a mythological creature like the Flying Dutchman. He's a draft dodger that has appeared all throughout history in every single conflict going all the way back to Cannae with the Romans. He was once a Roman soldier who ran away from the battle, was shot in the back with a golden arrow, and since that time has been a draft dodger and defector from every battle in the history of the human race.
He's been making out with other guys' girlfriends and wives since 44 BC.
Wait a minute. Netflix wants to buy that series.
It's a damn good idea.
Okay, so that's what Stephen Green is going to do. And would you care to go first, or
sure.
shall I?
I'm happy to go. I don't get the feeling that
I've got anything coming?
That you're not going to be taking this story.
Oh, okay.
I want to come back to something we talked about before based on Captain Marvel, and I just had a couple of extra things to say about it. So Captain Marvel's the new female superhero. And I know we've talked about this term, a Mary Sue, before, but a Mary Sue is a character based on a 2-paragraph short story written by this woman who was like doing a parody of it. And she was a 15-year-old member of Starfleet who was half Vulcan, who Kirk and Spock both immediately fell in love with, and who then saved the Enterprise, in fact, the entire Federation, only to die tragically because she has absolute magical powers.
So this was a fan fiction?
It was actually, turned out it was a parody of a fan fiction.
Okay.
So what happens in Mary Sue characters is they're not always female, but they're usually female because Wesley Crusher was a Mary Sue. But it's a.
Are you saying Wesley Crusher was male? Because I think that assumes a fact not in evidence.
Will Wheaton is a low
up,
down mangy skunk, but he was a Mary Sue too. So here's what it is. The interesting, I was looking at this guy. I was talking about this with Captain Marvel. Said that the interesting thing that's a difference between a Mary Sue and, let's say, Superman. Superman is all powerful, but a Mary Sue has no faults. They have no flaws. They have no weaknesses. They have all powers, and most importantly, and this is the issue, they have them immediately.
It's a Deus Ex Machina.
Yes, and it's also the machine that God might introduce to the world to make things happen.
Or that, yeah.
So, but seriously, so here's what happens. Like if you look at the original Star Wars trilogy, you start out with Luke Skywalker. He's a farm boy. First time he picks up a lightsaber, he practically runs himself through with it. This little drone here, zit, boom, hits him, stings him. It's because people who've never held a lightsaber before have to be trained in how to use a lightsaber. And the entire first 3 movies are about Luke Skywalker learning to become an absolute master with the lightsaber so that he could throw it away when he needed it the most.
And it took forever, and he almost didn't do it.
Took 3 movies, and he had to go through the darkness of the soul and so on. So
and that's a huge dramatic payoff.
And it's because you had to wait, you actually gained something. So now we contrast this with Rey, who's the Luke Skywalker from the last 3 films, who's a scrappy desert kid, exactly like Luke, living out on the fringes, exactly like Luke. Except the first time she gets into the Millennium Falcon, she's never been in the thing before. She flies it better than Han Solo. But more importantly, the first time she picks up a lightsaber, she defeats the existing Dark Lord, who is the absolute top of the New Order. She manages to defeat him because. Well,
and forgive my ignorance, but she's just supposed to be.
He had been shot.
No. Here's the end.
Chewie had shot Kylo Ren, so he had a handicap.
She manages to defeat the arch villain with a lightsaber, which she's essentially never held before, because she's a woman. That's why. Because women can do everything. And better than men too. And the future is female. And this is what is getting shoved.
The Force is female, is what they even said.
The Force is female. Yeah. So not only is it bad writing, and not only is it a chance to take a shot at the social justice warriors, but I think it's also fair to say what these people are doing is they are depriving, in their desire to shove feminism down everybody's throats, what they're really doing is they're depriving young girls of an actual role model that could be useful, because these Mary Sues, Captain Marvel and Rey, are born with magical powers.
There was no hero's journey.
No journey, no work, no study. I mean, you watch Luke, how many times did Luke... The thing that made Luke Skywalker interesting was all the times he failed, you know? He's trying to levitate the rocks, and he loses his balance, and he falls down. And he tries to levitate
He went to face Vader too soon in Empire, and that's a
there is no too soon for Rey. Rey's,
and I hated young Luke Skywalker like I hated Half Pint on Little House on the Prairie. I just...
Well, he's a kind of a whiny kid,
pick up some power
converters. I want to go to college now.
Yes, that's right.
And then it's not fair, Uncle Beru.
My ship is caught in the swamp, and I can't lift it out.
But so he starts out as this callow, kind of very primitive, sort of infantile guy. And having failed and having his hand cut off and watching his friends frozen and killed and all the rest of it, he then becomes a character worthy of the essentially magical powers he has at the end of a 3-movie arc.
And then they did some more movies, and he came full circle around to being that immature.
Well, that's right. And so that's exactly right. And so in The Force Awakens, you get Rey, who's this Mary Sue character, she's magical, and then you end up with Luke, who now that now that Rey is there, Luke has to be demoted. You know, you can't have 2 of these heroes in the same universe, in the same frame. And so Luke has to be demoted to grumpy old man, who's bitter and a murderer too, we find out, and or attempted murderer, and who basically dies for no reason. And that leaves the perfect female on the top of the Star Wars pyramid. So the political angle on this is the entire generation of people that love Star Wars and Marvel Comics are in a blinding rage towards the left because they left this world to play video games and watch Star Wars movies and superhero movies, and now this philosophy is following them and ruining not only their refuge but the religion that allowed them to be, heroes and Jedis in the first place.
And it's weird if you're a feminist or even if a progressive feminist, you would think that they would intuitively understand that what makes heroes admirable is the struggle, is the overcoming of challenges.
It's overcoming.
This is the point. This is the point. The social justice warriors and they want to fiat things. They don't want to work for anything. I'm convinced that the prerequisites for being a progressive are being just slightly smarter than average, being incredibly lazy, and being incredibly arrogant. And so people like that, why would we want to go to, what's the point of training for 4, 5, 10 years and going through all that trouble? Why don't you just give me the magical powers now? And so what these...
Or go on Twitter and I can demand that you call me what I want you to call me, even though it has absolutely no basis in reality or biology.
So the two political points...
Because I want it.
Right, that's right. So the two political points to be made are, number one, millennials are fuming at the ears. They're furious at the left, not at the right. That's an advantage that we should be an opportunity we should be taking advantage of. And secondly, it goes to the infantile nature of what feminism has become. I mean, when feminism was about women having equal rights, that would make a movie where somebody like Rey could then actually be tutored by Yoda, and you'd have a young female going through the same arc and going through the failures and all the repercussions and the doubts and by the time you were done with her, you'd have a tremendous character that everybody got behind. Ripley in Aliens. Man. She wasn't a Mary Sue. She wasn't born with miraculous powers to kill aliens. You watched her get tougher every single frame of the first movie, and then every single frame of the second movie, she's like, can some of these Marines go and take care of these guys? No, everybody's gone? Okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to go. And so she becomes one of the greatest characters ever. And this is what the social justice warriors are denying to young women, and it's how they think the world works. I want it, I demand it, I want it now, and I don't have to earn your respect. I demand it and give it to me.
The irony, I guess, this is that there have been the same women who are in leadership positions, whether political or cultural leadership positions, have had to scratch and claw and fight and do good work and get people to back them, and they basically did not drop out of a cloud and suddenly come up with a perfect solution.
Hard work to be successful.
They engage. I used to have the same criticism of Barack Obama, where I wish that
he's a Mary Sue too.
He should have told his story to the American public instead of glossing over. Not that he had the most difficult life in the world, but it would have been much more interesting if he would have pitched himself as a guy who lives in a big house, who made a lot of money by writing, who married well, stayed married, had kids, and all that kind of stuff.
But that's not the victimhood bill.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah. But who he actually was a much better story than the story he made up.
Well said. We'll save that for the show since we basically hashed the whole show up.
I know. We'll do it again.
Not that I want to piggyback on what Bill said, but in all honesty, Bill knew what I was going to do before I knew what he was going to do. So I'm not suggesting you tried to co-opt.
You were reading other stories. I heard you quoting them.
I did have a dalliance or two with other stories, but I decided to settle on this one. I tried to throw him off in the car on the way over by telling him stories that I was interested in.
Real stories.
Yeah, legit stories, not this one that I'm about to do. But no, there's a big press announcement from the Bernie Sanders for President campaign, who is Bernie, by the way, for those of you who haven't been looking at the polling, is one of the 21 leading candidates for the Democratic nomination. Clearly.
Is he in the top 22?
He is within...
Because if he's in the top 22, that means he's number 22.
He's within a standard deviation of the top 22.
James Lilac said that, I think it was. It was probably close to wrong, but he was saying anytime you see something that says, this is one of the top 7 resorts in Minnesota.
There are 8.
It's number 7.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah, that's funny.
So anyway, Bernie put out a press release that they've hired a bunch of people, and thank goodness for that. They've hired 15 top campaign leaders, and 10 of them are women, and they're predominantly women of color. And the overall message here, which he is now having, his press people are now speaking on his behalf, and they're women, and the message is that if you're going to run a progressive presidential campaign and you say you believe in these values, your campaign staff should look like the people who are your base of voters. And I just think this is awesome. I think this is perfectly consistent with why this is a revelation now, I guess, is my big question. Like, why is it now, 2019?
Well, he's got to find some angle over Robert Francis, Dom Hall, Gleason, Beta, or Rourke.
Yep, Beta is right. Beta, who should call him Beta O'Rourke? I love it.
I've been doing that for weeks now, months.
The problem with Bernie is that Bernie doesn't have any victimhood status. Used to be for a while that being Jewish would give you a break, but now that's part of the oppression cycle. Now being
also,
Jewish is a disadvantage.
Practicing.
The Democratic Party's so anti-Semitic.
He's what is that guy that worked with Seinfeld and then
Larry David.
He's a Larry David Jewish guy.
Larry David. That's about as far as you go, by the way.
Larry David does a brilliant Bernie Sanders.
Yes, he does. So anyway, it's not just the posturing, I think, that's fascinating by this, but part of the question one might ask is, I bet there are a lot of Republican candidates who have quite a few women in top positions. I know in their administrations when they become elected, but also in their campaigns. But they don't do this kind of thing. They don't put out a press release that says, hey, I just hired all these women.
Of color.
For some reason, Bernie Sanders' binder of women is not as offensive as Mitt Romney's binders of women.
Nope.
I should probably save this for the segment, but I'll go ahead and blurt it out now. If I remember correctly, W. Bush's cabinet was less white and less female than Barack Obama's.
Less white
and more female than
Barack
Obama's.
So and this is coming from somebody who thinks, oh, well, that's awesome. I think because I think people of merit should be chosen for positions of responsibility. And frankly, I think that there's no excuse for anybody to say, well, we could only find men of merit. Because I know how hiring works. Hiring doesn't work for Monster.com or what is that other thing that they use, ZipRecruiter or whatever. Hiring works because people know people and people recommend people to other people, and it's all connections. So any candidate who says, well, we would have hired a woman for this position, but we just couldn't find any qualified candidates, that's just BS. It just means that
you weren't looking.
Yeah, you weren't really looking for that. And I'm not saying that you should go out there and cast a wide net among women and discourage men from applying, but
so you want to put women in nets now?
In nets,
put them in a zoo,
That's right.
Kind of Planet of the Apes kind of a reservation, I suppose, so you can shoot at them.
But anyway, I just think on the one hand, it certainly looks like social justice posturing on the part of the Sanders campaign. On the other hand, it is consistent with what they say they stand for, and it's funny that it's taken so long for them to get around to this. And I also do wonder why Republicans aren't knowing what the zeitgeist is about the attitude toward these things, why they can't at least allow it to occasionally leak out that they've hired the occasional woman or black person or Hispanic or.
I just had a flash of what Hillary Clinton must feel like right now. Like in this particular point in history. I mean, seriously, she's got to feel like a person. And if you've never been a surfer or a body surfer or boogie board, this means nothing to you. But she's got to be a person who saw this amazing wave coming and waited the longest time and wait. Here comes this wave. Paddles. And just as she's about to get over it, turns out no, she wasn't quite fast enough. So the wave disappears behind her, and then she turns around and looks behind her, and now the biggest wave in the history of the world, much higher, and she just watches it just roll away. And it's like, you could have caught that one, you could have caught something, but now you're just wet and cold.
She's just so blindingly corrupt. I cannot tell you how. Every day I'm thankful she lost in 2016. Every single day.
Well, and we know what she thinks about this. She thinks she was the inspiration. She thinks
Yeah,
that
that's right.
because she said as much,
That's right.
that she thinks that the reason why there are so many women running for office
'Cause of
around the
her.
country is because of her crushing defeat in 2016.
When in point of fact,
No,
if
I
there
think
had
it's
been
'cause of
no
the
Hillary
$100 million
Clinton, we would have had a
she
woman
got.
president a long time ago. A long time ago. Condi Rice would have been president if Condi Rice had had enough, if she didn't have so much character that the idea was repugnant to her.
Yeah.
I admire her enormously.
Me too.
Well, there are some others we admire enormously. Those are the members at BillWhittle.com who make this show possible. It's been a thrill for me in the last couple of months to get to know some of these members better as they move over from our old website to the new one. And so I've had a lot of personal interaction with people both by email and by the new private messaging facility within the new website. Steve Green and I have actually exchanged a few conversations in that private messaging.
Scott Ott has personally lowered over 7,000 points of blood pressure in the last 4 months.
Ah,
And that's just
nice.
systolic.
And I don't even know what that means.
Me neither, but it sounded
it
pretty.
did.
it's either the bigger number or the smaller number.
One of the two numbers.
It sounded medicinal,
Yeah.
medical. So anyway, we're grateful to the people not only who are members, but to the people who have now come over and really lived out the true meaning of our citizen producer creed by becoming bloggers at the new Bill Whittle website, which in the very near future is going to become BillWhittle.com. And so all of this to say two things. Number one, thank you. And number two, if you're still hanging out at a website that in your address bar shows up as BillWhittle.space, that is going the way of the progressive very soon, of the dodo very soon.
Of the dinosaur.
Of the dinosaur, that's right. And we will be turning that into petroleum and using it to fuel our Hemis.
And then we will throw it onto the
Yes.
trash heap of history.
That's right.
I mean, I drive a diesel.
The new website, by the way, run completely on wind power. I don't know if you knew about that
And
part.
I generate the wind.
That's right.
I
There
am
is
so
some
glad I'm not in that small room with you right now.
There is some natural gas as well.
It's unbearable, yeah. I generate that too.
It's a liquefied natural
I
gas.
beg your pardon, excuse me.
So anyway, if you're not yet at the new website, now would be a good time to click the Become a Member link on the existing BillWhittle.space website, and you will see a way to, number one, check and see if you are ready to migrate to the new website. And number two, if you're not ready, you can send us a note, and we will then hold your hand and promenade gracefully to the new website. We are glad to help in any way that we can. I know we've had some members, Bill, who consider themselves not tech savvy, and I want to encourage you. If I'm building the website, you don't have to be too smart to use the website, and so you really the only we have nothing to fear but fear itself. So you can handle it, and whatever it is that you can't handle, we're glad to help you with that.
We've spent literally dozens of dollars making this easier
Countless
for
dozens.
people to navigate, and we're very, very happy with it.
So anyway, we're excited about that, and you'll see really a whole new Bill Whittle experience. But watch our previous Bill Whittle Now episode to get more details
Right,
about
we
that.
talked about that quite a bit.
We just shot that.
Oh, yeah, I queued that up this morning, and then all heck broke loose over here, so I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I'm looking forward to that.
You watch your mouth, young man. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and attention here at the pre-production meeting of this week's Right Angles. We are now going to go shoot the things that we talked about, and we appreciate the support of the members who make that possible. So, for Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thank you.